Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cultured Pull List. I'm your host, Mike. Now, the marketing campaign for the new Supergirl movie is in full swing. The first teaser is coming out tomorrow. The only problem is we've already covered the comic that the movie's based on the show, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. So I decided to dig through the archives and pull out that episode because that was actually our third episode ever. It was posted on the old separate Cultured Pull List channel. I recorded it with my old co-host Luke. We recorded it in two parts because we thought it was too long of a book back then to cover in one episode, so I just kind of spliced those two together. So the episode's going to run a little longer than the last few have, but still hope you stick around and listen to it. If this is your first time watching or listening to this episode, or if you happen to see it way back when we posted it a couple years ago, I hope you enjoy it. It's a bit of a time capsule too for when James Gunn first announced all the DCU stuff, because we recorded this like the week after he announced the Supergirl movie, the Superman movie, and all the other stuff back in 2023. So yeah, I hope it's a little bit of nostalgia for you, because it was when I first opened this up to edit it. So anyway, enough jabbering. Let's get to the episode. Hello, everyone. So, as many of you know, last week James Gunn announced the first few projects in the new DCU slate. And a lot of them are based on actual comic books and comic series. And he actually tweeted soon after that saying the actual comics that his DCU will be based on. We saw All-Star Superman, The Authority, the original run, Swamp Thing, and Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. So also, since he's tweeted this, a lot of these books have been selling out on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So we figured we would cover some of these. So we're starting with Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Since it's an 8-issue run, we're only going to do the first 4 issues. But I guess this is Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, issues 1 through 4. I guess it's going to be part 1 of our coverage. And it has the same credits for the entire book, but the author is Tom King. The artist is Bilquis Evely. The colorist is Matthias Lopez, and the inker is Clayton Cowles. I meant to put the release there, but it started on August 2021, and it ended its run in its 8th issue in April 2022. So it's a pretty new book.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right into the summary. We are going to do a summary, and then we're just going to talk about our thoughts. So let's jump right into this summary. So this book, even though it's a Supergirl title, it actually is narrated by this young girl named Ruthie Marie Knoll. But the Ruthie and Marie is spelled with a Y instead of an I, which we would normally spell alike.
Yeah.
And she seems to live on like a sort of medieval-ish world, but it opens with her father being killed by this man named Krem, Krem of the Yellow Hills. And he stabs him through with a blade and leaves the sword in his body. And Ruthie ends up finding her father's body, and she takes the sword that Krem left in him and wonders why he left it there in the first place. But she ends up keeping the blade, and seemingly to exact her own revenge at some point. And she assumes, or she makes an educated guess, that Krem is a King's agent that came to test her family's loyalty, and apparently her father failed the test. Krem actually came to the family asking for lodging.
Yeah.
And ended up staying the night with them. And then the next morning, he and the father talked, or I guess I think it might have been that evening. I don't remember exactly, but he and the father talked and started talking about the king. And Ruthie was thinking that her dad didn't, show enough loyalty or said something wrong, and that's why Krem ended up killing him.
Yeah.
But she and her family meet after that, and she has 6 brothers, and they all want to go and exact revenge pretty much. So they start arguing over who's going to go. But she ends up taking matters into her own hands and just going herself. And her mother tells her to take her father's old steed. So she does and sets out on her quest to find this. Well, first of all, she kind of wants to find somebody to help her in her revenge quest. So she ends up in this tavern where she meets this guy who has definitely not skipped his steroids. That's for sure. A bit of a musclehead there, but she attempts to hire him to go with her to track down Krem and kill him. And she's basically putting up her sword as payment. And he basically agrees, but he takes the sword and is like, I'm going to go kill Krem. You stay here. And she's like, that's not part of the deal. And he's basically like, learn your place, woman, and slapped her in the face. And she ends up just kind of lying there on the tavern while he starts towards the door. But as he does, a blonde woman who we know is Supergirl is sitting in the corner next to the door and ends up stopping him and telling him to give back the sword. And he definitely doesn't want to. And they kind of exchange words, and she ends up revealing that she's there on her 21st birthday. Basically, this is her version of a celebration. Right. And she is with Crypto, which is cool. But she ends up fighting with this meathead, and she wins, but she is hurt herself because this planet has a red sun. So she's basically depowered here.
Right.
But she's still able to beat the crap out of this guy and take his sword as well as Ruthie's. And I believe she pretty much is so wasted she passes out because she wakes up in a bed of the tavern with Ruthie there. And something about this Supergirl that I think really, it's kind of a small thing, but I think it distinguishes her from Superman. She swears a lot in this book.
Yeah.
Obviously, they kind of, bleep it out with the typical comic symbols.
Yeah.
But she swears a lot. And there's this funny exchange where Ruthie says, you often speak of this. I'm assuming it's, shit or fuck or something. And, she says, especially when your agony becomes acute. This is your husband? And I thought that was kind of funny.
I just always assume that she's saying fuck or some variation of that, and it's very funny.
Yeah, it is pretty funny. And my brain kind of inserts the word in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though it's just symbols, it just kind of keeps the dialogue flowing in my brain. Right. But she attempts to hire Kara after she sees what she does to the dude in the bar. Or Supergirl, I guess. They don't actually refer to her to Kara yet. It's just Supergirl. I think that's because that's what she's calling herself. But she basically tells Ruthie to, stop a revenge quest and not to... She even says something like, don't kill anybody, killing is bad, or something. And she ends up rowing off with Crypto in a boat, but Ruthie jumps in the water and swims after her. And when she follows Supergirl to her destination, on the other side of the river or lake, whatever it is, she sees Supergirl's ship that she took to get there, which kind of blows her mind because she's never seen a spaceship like that before. Yeah. They seem to live in a pretty primitive planet, I kind of said this earlier, but kind of medieval, Middle Ages, Earth kind of thing. But it's obviously an alien planet with a red sun. And Supergirl tries to get Ruthie to leave, but she won't. And she ends up kind of breaking down and saying her entire world is dead, and everything she cared about is gone. And this does seem to touch Supergirl. It kind of seems to remind Supergirl of her own origins. And she seems to be kind of maybe changing her mind, but then Krem shows up and shoots her in the chest and ends up shooting Crypto too, because Crypto goes after him. And Krem is accompanied by that meathead from the bar, who I guess took him there. I guess he knew where he was and was like, this girl is after you. I'll take her to you and you can kill her. But Supergirl does end up beating the crap out of these guys. And it seems like even though she is like depowered, she still has some powers because she's able to take like 3 arrows to the chest and survive. Yeah. She is bleeding, but she still goes over and beats the crap out of them. And she knocks out the one guy, the musclehead guy, but Krem manages to run away while she kneels over Crypto to see how he's doing. And he ends up actually getting in her ship and flying away in it.
Right.
To where they know not. No. And that is pretty much the end of this first part. So going to the next issue, we open with Supergirl and Ruthie having to confront one of the greatest horrors known to man or alien, public transportation. And it's pretty bleak. They're kind of squished together, and these aliens keep leaning on Ruthie, and she keeps like asking them to stop, and she ends up having to let Supergirl kind of be the muscle in these situations. Right. But they end up stopping at this bar on one of their one of these space station stops, and there's this alien there that wants to get revenge on Superman. And he's basically like, oh, well, you're Supergirl, next best thing, and he doesn't seem to be threatened by her at all. Right. And in the I guess it's not really a voiceover, obviously, but if it were like, not a comic, it would be a voiceover. Ruthie narration. The narration. Ruthie mentions that there were several encounters like this where basically people recognize her as like Supergirl, but they really don't take her seriously. And she ends up, beating the crap out of him.
I think this is a bit of like a meta thing where like people in the real world don't like necessarily understand the character of Supergirl.
I think a little bit also kind of a commentary on, people not taking women seriously.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's part of it too. But they end up like spending like weeks on this transport. I guess like a space bus. They end up spending like lots of weeks on this, and they end up in this one space station where the driver actually calls Supergirl to the front and is basically like, that picture was supposed to go there, but she beat the crap out of this guy. But this guy basically says that they need Supergirl's help because there's this thing called a something dragon, a Carpane dragon, which apparently eats anything metal, which is this right here. And it's in their way. It's about to eat their whole space bus thing. And she's like, well, I'd like to help you, but I have no powers. So, and he's like, oh, well, I guess we're dead. But she ends up going to the passenger, the main like hold or whatever, where everyone's freaking out. And she basically yells at them to give her what she calls reds, which are apparently these red pills that are actually red kryptonite in melted lead. So very interesting pills. Apparently they give normal people or aliens like hallucinations or visions. So I guess it's kind of alien LSD, but apparently if Kryptonians take it, their visions become reality, which is interesting because red kryptonite is a very kind of an interesting thing in the comics. It in like a lot of the pre-crisis stuff, it gave Superman, it gave Kryptonians like random powers, or it kind of gave them random effects. Like sometimes it increased Superman's powers, sometimes it like turned him into a dragon, and like all this crazy stuff. So it seems like this is kind of playing off of that and making it like a random pill. But it ends up turning her into Phoenix pretty much from X-Men. But it's pretty cool though. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. The art is great.
Oh yeah, and she's able to defeat this dragon. And then they just kind of continue on their way. And there's this small scene that doesn't seem super important on its face, but Ruthie puts a lot of emphasis on it, where they stop in this bathroom, and she mentioned earlier in the narration that she and her family bathe like once a year or something. Right. So Supergirl is washing her hands, and she turns to Ruthie and is like, Are you going to wash your hands? It's been like a month. And she's like, I don't really know how. So Supergirl ends up actually like teaching her how to wash her hands, which is kind of interesting. You never really like think of having to teach somebody, at least not of Ruthie's age. But it seems like she's like maybe like a young teenager. They never really say.
Right.
And then the narration seems to be like in a past tense, like her in the future writing all this. So this also leads to a conversation where Ruthie asks Supergirl if she ever tried to avenge, the death of her parents and her planet, which kind of off screen or, off page, it seems Supergirl told Ruthie some of her past.
Yeah. One of my, I'll get into this later, but one of my criticisms of this book is that there's a lot of narration.
Yeah.
And I feel like the panel you just had up is a good example of it, where like she asks Supergirl if she ever avenged her family. There's a picture of her and there's a box explaining the emotion. Like that middle one right there. I feel like if you got rid of that, it would have been just as effective, if not more effective, just the art speaking for itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I do kind of like that line though, where she says like, in that reply, Supergirl gave her like, no, I didn't. She does say like in that response, she heard a lifetime of regret. I did like that line though. There was kind of, I do kind of agree with you about the excessive narration.
Yeah.
But anyway, after this whole encounter, at some point, they do a lot of time jumping. That is kind of part of the narration. They're just like, well, weeks later, and then like a lot of stuff happened, but then this happened, and basically this alien is leaning on Ruthie again, and she basically tells him to like, stop, in a very long-winded way. And something I do like about the narration though is it is kind of almost like Victorian era speech, or like, kind of like Shakespearean. There we go. Yeah, Shakespearean, which I kind of like, especially considering it matches kind of the world she lives on.
Right.
Kind of that old English stuff. But this alien tries to basically rip her head off. No, and Supergirl just elbows him in the head, and that's kind of the end of that. He ends up just like passing out, which kind of shows that her powers are returning. That they're near a yellow star. And this is basically when they come to the end of their terminal, the end of the tracks, basically, even though, it's space. But and during this, as they're landing, Ruthie does narrate again, and she kind of goes back and mentions how Supergirl like took Krypto and put him on the boat that she had, her rowboat, and took him to, I guess, a doctor, but Ruthie calls him a mender. And he manages to help Supergirl, but apparently the arrows that Krem used were dipped in some sort of hunter poison, and it doesn't affect humans or people, but it affects animals.
Yeah.
So it is killing Krypto, and without knowing what the actual hunter poison is, because those are unique to each hunter, he can't really help Krypto. So that kind of makes it personal for Supergirl. She has to find Krem to figure out his poison, his mixture, and save Krypto. I kind of feel like this scene should have been earlier. They just sort of like skip, like, like after Krem escapes, we have no idea what happens to Krypto. I was even thinking when they were in the bus or whatever it is initially, I'm like, where's Krypto? Like, we didn't really learn where he is, and then we finally get to see in this panel here. But I kind of wish they'd done that earlier. But
this kind of this is another criticism, not necessarily of this book, but sort of as Tom King's writing style in general. Like, he doesn't really have a whole lot of respect for supporting characters. And in this story, it's just Krypto the Superdog, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But when he was writing Batman, like, his supporting characters are kind of a big deal. And so, like, he'll just shoot Nightwing, he'll, kill Alfred, this and that. And he's just, it's, so, that's one style of Tom King that I'm not a huge fan of.
Gotcha. Yeah, I kind of see, like, on the one hand, I kind of feel like, it's kind of a ballsy thing to do, but on the other hand, you kind of have to be sparing with it and like
Yeah.
make it count, make it
Mhm.
matter. But
Right.
this part ends with Supergirl basically regaining her powers and
Mhm.
being able to fly, but also saying that she can see everything, seemingly that she has her, X-ray vision and telescopic vision back.
Yeah.
So that is that. You want to take over from here, Luke?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll start with issue 3. It opens
Okay.
up with a guy. He's later referred to as a lawman. I'm not exactly sure what
Hmm.
position that is, but he's sort of
Yeah.
building a tower of cards. And
Hmm.
they ask him like, "Hey, have you seen Krem?" And he doesn't say no, but he doesn't really say yes either. So Supergirl's
Yeah.
kind of frustrated, and so she just blows over his tower, and then they leave.
Yeah.
And as they're leaving, they're talking, and Supergirl basically says that she could tell that he was lying, but not because of any of her superpowers, just because of like social skills or whatever. She could like kind of
Right.
deduce that he was hiding something.
Yeah, and she said something like along the lines of like their biology is too complex to just be able to like tell from his heartbeat, because that's what
Right.
Ruthie asked. And yeah, it
Yeah.
was more she just could tell he was lying through what you said.
Mhm. And then they go to a hotel, and when they're signing up, there's 2 separate columns. There's the
Mhm.
blue column and the red and the purple column.
Yeah.
One of the interesting lines from the hotel clerk, I guess, is she says, "Oh yeah, there used to be a bunch of them," referring to the purples, "but they
Mhm.
didn't stay in 7B. Don't worry about that." And so it's kind of interesting foreshadowing as to like the culture of this planet.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, because I think Supergirl asked if purples referred to like off-worlders or
mhm.
something, so I kind of assumed that's what it meant for a few panels until it made it
Yeah,
more clear that there were purples. Yeah.
right. Yeah. Um, yeah, and then where was I? Oh yeah, very cryptic. So they stay in the hotel. They're going to like a restaurant the next day. A
Hmm.
similar conversation with the waitress. There's kind of
Yeah.
very cryptic. She's asking the same questions but not giving a whole lot of answers.
Hmm.
And then someone tries to shoot them in the night. I wasn't sure
Right.
if we know who this was yet, or because I haven't read past issue 4, so I'm not sure if
Yeah.
um, it was anybody we know yet, or probably not. But okay. Yeah. That's the next day. They're trying to be like, everything here is so perfect, yet there's like some kind of dark secret thing happening.
Hmm.
And so they go see the mayor,
Yeah. Yeah.
and again, similar conversation. So she gets mad. She throws the desk at him.
Hmm.
And then they do this kind of thing where Supergirl has Ruthie on her back, and they start to do this a lot later on. But this is the first time that they do it, and they're kind of
Hmm.
flying around the planet trying to figure out the history, what they're hiding.
Yeah.
They come to the ruins of this place called Purple Town,
Hmm.
and then Supergirl's now starting to put it together. So she attacks these 2 guards, and this is interesting because the story of what Purple Town is and the culture of this planet was not revealed through the guards' dialogue, but through
No.
Ruthie's narration, which I thought was an
Right.
interesting choice.
Yeah.
But basically, there was kind of this separation of like the blue people are like um, high society, the purple people are more like low society, second
Hmm.
degree kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then this gang of pirates, basically called Barbon's Bigrades,
Yeah.
um, attacked the planet, and the Blues were like, "Well, hey, don't attack us. We'll give you money if you just leave us alone and attack the Purples." So, essentially, yeah, Krem was the one who gave him the idea to do that. So Krem joins the Brigade,
Well,
and
it
essentially,
was. I think it was that like they wanted to pay them, but they didn't have enough money.
right,
And Krem overheard like the mayor and the guard talking about it, and he was basically like, "Why don't you give them as much money as you can, and then like give them the purples
mhm,
to
yeah,
kill? Because they just kill for fun, pretty much is their
yes,
thing."
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then so after that, they kind of take Krem because they're like, "Well, you're kind of a sicko like us, so you could join us and you could
Right?
just kill people."
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the end of issue 3.
Yeah.
Um, Moving on to issue 4, and issue 4 is kind of like a montage more. There's like a scene here, then you move on to a different scene,
Yeah.
and then scene. There's not a whole lot of connectivity between the individual scenes
Hmm.
in this issue. So they're talking to an alien who's super like beat up, and he says that he may have been attacked by Krem, and in flashbacks we find out that he was. Basically, him and his friend were attacked by the Byrogand, and his friend died, but this alien who's speaking barely made it out alive. And then so Supergirl and Ruthie, they find another alien who's of the same race, and he's burying their dead, and he's basically like, if I can bury all of them individually before the end of the day, then we don't have to bury them in a mass grave, and so at least we can have, you know, that kind of luxury. And so Supergirl basically takes a shovel and does it all for him. And then they meet another giant alien, and I wanted to point out this artwork is very similar to Jack Kirby's artwork.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of the New Gods and even the Eternals a little bit.
Yeah, Eternals, exactly. Yeah. Jack Kirby. Supergirl helps her vent her emotions because she's like, he has all this emotion kind of built up, and she's just been pushing it down, and then she's like, just hit me because I'm immortal, it doesn't matter. And so she helps her kind of like vent out all the emotions because they were also attacked by the pirates. And they go to another race of aliens. I don't believe we see this race, but they kind of, Ruthie basically says that they record everything. And so Supergirl goes in to see the tapes, but she's like, Ruthie, you can't come in, you got to stay here. And so it appears like it was a really long time because when Supergirl comes back, Ruthie's asleep, and Supergirl's just like completely out of it, implying that what she saw was pretty heinous. And then we go to one of the pirates being publicly executed. And I don't know if this is intentional, but his mask kind of looks like the original Red Hood, like the one the Joker wore.
I see that. Yeah.
I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I just found that interesting. Next, they go to basically what they're doing is, I didn't explain this clear enough, but they're kind of just going to all the different places where these pirates did, and they're trying to just follow them essentially.
And find Krem.
Yeah, exactly. And so the next stop is this monk planet, and she says that the monks didn't fight back at all. They were just kind of chanting while they were being killed. And this is kind of Supergirl's breaking point. So she says she can't scream because she'll destroy the entire planet. So she basically just flies into a sun and just kind of like explodes there.
Right.
And at the end of the issue, Supergirl's like, Ruthie, you can't be here anymore because this is just too dangerous. But obviously, Ruthie refuses, and that's the end of issue 4.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts so far on this? You kind of mentioned we kind of mentioned a few things as we did the summary, but what are your overall thoughts about the first half of this?
I'm kind of mixed. I'm not a huge fan of Tom King, but I think this is one of his better works. There's just a lot of narration, and so it feels like super dense trying to get through it all. But I really like the way that the characterization of Supergirl, she's sort of jaded, and and that's what, in my mind, that's what makes her different than Superman, because they have similar powers, but she's like a young adult, sometimes a teenager, but in this one she's 21, and she's just kind of like jaded and just kind of more angry because in some versions she becomes a Red Lantern even. She's
like very passionate. I don't know if I should say like more passionate than Superman, but like she has less. She has more top problem like controlling it, like you said with the anger thing.
Yeah, she has the powers of Superman, but not necessarily the restraint of Superman.
Right.
So that's what makes her interesting to me.
Yeah, I think I really didn't have much expectations going into this. Kind of like you said earlier, I think a lot of times they just kind of make Supergirl like a Superman clone. Right. So I didn't really know, and like a lot of her comics and everything, I can't really like name a specific villain of hers. Like she pretty much just goes up against the Superman villains from what I know, and like there not only is she a lot of times portrayed as a clone of Superman, but even her like adventures and storylines feel like a Superman storyline, just replaced with Supergirl. So I really didn't know what to expect going into this. But I am really liking that it is kind of like a sci-fi revenge quest adventure with a little bit of like medieval stuff at the beginning. I thought that's kind of a cool mix, and kind of making Supergirl in a way kind of like a medieval like quester character, kind of like Geralt from The Witcher or something like that. Which I thought was kind of an interesting take. And I also like that they show her both not having powers and having powers. I don't really like it when they like throw a character into the situation like, oh, they have no powers, and like, but then it's like, what's the point of having this character's comic then if they're not really the character, you know? But I like that there's both. You get to see her, that you get to see that she's formidable without her powers. But then also you get to see her being the classic Supergirl, basically, you know, having the powers of Superman. So I thought all that was cool. I definitely, I think the narration, I have mixed feelings about it, because I like, it's kind of unique that it's Ruthie narrating, and it's, you know, it's a Supergirl comic, but it's kind of Ruthie's story in a way. But I do feel like it becomes kind of a crutch sometimes. Instead of just like showing stuff, which is kind of the whole point of comics, is you can tell us the story, you know, with dialogue and some narration, but mostly with the pictures, with the art, the images. So I kind of feel like it becomes a crutch sometimes, especially when it just sort of is like, oh, and there was a lot of months and weeks between this, but I'm going to cut it out because it's going to be boring. I'm like, oh, okay. But, you know, and it's kind of, there's a lot of like plot points that aren't shown. Ruthie's just kind of like future Ruthie, at whatever point she's writing this, it's just kind of like, so she told me this, or this happened, or, you know, I thought this, you know, instead of like using it to just like showing the emotion or showing us what happens. So I definitely see, you know, your points with that, and I definitely agree. I thought it was interesting at first, but it gets to be a bit much. And I think also with the storytelling, some of the things aren't linear or like explained enough. Like there are things that Ruthie really seems to like think are important, and they seem very minor in the actual, like an alien says something about like happy as peach pie or something, and she makes this big deal like, oh, I've been to a bunch of planets since then, I've never found peach pie very happy, which I feel like would work really well in like a novel. But I feel like in this, it kind of broke the flow of what was happening, and kind of seemed like a really insignificant thing in the grand scheme of the whole conversation. Because she said it right after the desk clerk at the hotel like exploded on Supergirl. You know, so I don't know. There are definitely stuff like that, but I will say the art is really, really cool.
The art is incredible.
Like, there are just a few like trying to
I have
find the names.
I don't know how well this is going to show up on the screen, but I have one of the images as my phone background, actually. It's one of the alternate covers, I think.
Both Bilquis Evely and Matthias Lopez, because he's the colorist. Both the art and just the colors are really, really beautiful. And I wasn't really sure going into this, because, you know, like the main cover and everything, like it looks cool, but at the same time, it didn't really do a whole lot for me. But then just seeing the actual artwork, like the actual characters remind me very slightly of like John Romita Jr.'s art and John Romita, but the actual like just that shot and trying to find like a few of the space ones are really nice too. Like that just looks super cool.
And there's one of the images from issue 4 where the kind of the nature kind of looks very Dr. Seuss.
It's just really pretty, and like it's just really nice to look at, which I think some comics I kind of don't pay as much like I'm more paying attention to the dialogue, not the art, and I feel like that's kind of a bit of a referendum on the art, because it's just not really like grabbing me. I feel like if the art is really nice, I'm gonna stop and be like, whoa, let me just look at this before I read the you know, the speech bubbles. Is there anything else you want to say about this book so far?
You kind of mentioned it, but this is sort of a very different story than what Dark Crisis, what we were just covering, because it's like the story of Dark Crisis is pretty straightforward. This is the heroes, these are the villains they're going to fight. This one's a lot more complex. And so it's more of like a sci-fi adventure, unless you're normal superhero story.
This book does really make me look forward to what they do with the Supergirl movie. I'm sure it's not going to be a direct adaptation, but if they do anything like this and make it like a sci-fi adventure like this, it could be really cool, especially all of the art in this. I feel like could be adapted super well with, you know, with, you know, CGI and even practical effects and stuff. So I really look forward to that. And also just seeing Supergirl be like this, where like James Gunn did say she's kind of jaded, which she is, but not to the like she's not like jaded in like a Wolverine or like a Punisher sort of way. She's still got that Supergirl and Superman spirit to her, you know, like we see in this. You know, she is kind, she does help people that were affected by those pirates, those raiders, but you know, like we said, like I said earlier, like she swears a lot and she just kind of doesn't take shit. You know, she's a lot more snarky than, you know, Superman normally would be. So I really like that she's a different person. She's got Superman's power, but she's a different person. I really hope they adapt that well in the movie when that comes out, probably not till like 2027. So let's just jump right into this. We're starting with issue 5 and then going to the end to issue 8. So starting with issue 5. So this issue starts out where we left off pretty much. Ruthie and Supergirl are still looking for Krem. They're kind of hot on his trail, kind of following his trail of destruction. Apparently he has a trick up his sleeve, something called a Mordru orb, which is basically this magic orb that is really hard to make because apparently you need to kill like an insane amount of people.
So they said it's not hard to make, but it's hard to like the actual idea, the ritual or whatever of making it's very simple. But before you do that, you have to kill like 1,000 people or whatever.
And I'm pretty sure you have to kill them like basically for the sole purpose of making the orb. I think that's what they said. So like that's also why it's difficult. You basically kind of have to go on a killing spree, which Krem had been doing. So so he whipped this out and threw it at Supergirl and Ruthie and teleported them to a completely different planet with a bunch of monsters roaming around, but the sun was green. And apparently Supergirl explains to Ruthie that this planet was basically made by Superman's enemies. It doesn't really specify who. And it was basically made to be a trap / like torture planet for Superman. So the sun itself is made out of kryptonite. And there's all these monsters there to basically kill him once he is weakened. And apparently he had been on this planet before and lasted like 45 minutes. He tried to outlast and just like wait for sunset. But then the Justice League came and rescued him. But at this point, Supergirl's only recourse is to wait 9 hours for the sun to set. And she's going to be in like, she's basically going to be like dying that whole time. So, so she and Ruthie just find these like outcropping of rock and they just kind of hang out. Supergirl walks as far as she can, and then she just collapses because she can't go any further. And she kind of goes in and out of consciousness and screams of agony for a long time, while Ruthie is left to defend her and kill whatever monsters come by, which some do. And she has to use the blade she pulled out of her father's chest, which she's been carrying this whole time. She does actually use that to kill one of the monsters. But then the second time monsters show up, they're like these weird pterodactyl things. She hadn't cleaned the blade handle, the sword handle, so it slips out of her hand. She can't get a good grip on it. She almost gets taken out, but Supergirl wakes up from her stupor long enough just to laser the pterodactyl creature, basically, and saves Ruthie. So Ruthie vows that she's going to actually clean the handle and not, be caught unawares again. And this goes on. They obviously have to wait, the 9 hours. At one point, Supergirl tries to go to this lake, pretty much in the smack in the center of this planet or whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure if they say it's an actual planet, but I think it is. But it's probably a pretty small one. But there's this lake in the middle, a bunch of vegetation, but it's basically designed to attract all the monsters there. So if you go there for water, you're going to get attacked by like all the monsters. So Supergirl tries to go to get some water because she's really suffering, but Ruthie has to stop her, and Supergirl is weak enough that she really can't, fight Ruthie that much. So she ends up just accepting and laying back down. And it's just about sunset when this big old sucker shows up and looks hungry. So Ruthie tries to fight him off, but she's not doing the greatest job because he's huge and she's tiny, and she's just kind of praying that the sun will go down so Supergirl will get her power back. And luckily at the last second, the sun goes down enough that Supergirl gets enough of her powers back that she's able to stop this monster. And she even basically calls Superman a bitch in the process because like she said, like 45 minutes, like he only lasts 45 minutes. What a little bitch. It's a pretty funny scene, but that's pretty much all that happens in this. At the end, the sun goes down completely. Supergirl has her powers back, and she and Ruthie fly away from that horrible planet. Now, let's see. Now, the next issue, we finally get to see Supergirl's origin, which going into this, I knew was going to be a little different from previous incarnations, previous, whatever you want to call it, previous continuity. It's like there have been a lot of versions. I'm thinking of Injustice, mainly Injustice 2. Like there are a lot of versions like that where she sees a lot more of Krypton being destroyed than Cal would because he was just a baby. So she, in most continuity, she kind of has more trauma than Cal because she was old enough to remember everything that was going on pretty much. But in this, we really get to see that like tenfold because she was in class just doing normal teenager stuff, and then Krypton just like exploded, and she was just, you know, like most of the buildings were in rubble. She was just like, she basically had to witness Krypton be destroyed and pretty much everybody she knows die, pretty much, at least the people caught in the explosion. But she and a handful of people survived when Krypton exploded, because apparently Argo City, where she lived, like there's this, a big chunk of Krypton kind of got blown away from the rest of the planet during the explosion. And it seems like most of, if not all of Argo City, like survived. But it's just kind of like floating out in space. It's just pretty much just like a space rock floating. And yeah, so they managed to survive. The Kryptonians in Argo City that survived the blast are able to survive for a while. But Kara's mother gets really sick, and she does not last long after getting sick and ends up dying. And Kara's father, who is, for those of you who don't know, Zor-El, he is Jor-El's brother. He's also a scientist. He's also very brilliant, and he's like the one that's helping keep Argo City alive. He figures out that his wife, Kara's mother, died from radiation poisoning, and he puts two and two together. And apparently the yellow suns that they've been like passing when they're floating around in space have turned Krypton radioactive. So they're basically standing on radioactive material. It's like, for those of us who know, it seems like it turned it into kryptonite. So they're basically just standing. It's a bunch of Kryptonians just like living on a hunk of kryptonite, which is obviously not good for them. So his plan, that's later. Whoops. His plan is to basically mass produce a bunch of lead shielding, put that on the ground and attach it. And like pretty much all the Kryptonians had to pitch in, and it took like a month, I think, for that to work. And Kara just kind of like worked tirelessly. There was this one scene where she kept going for like 2 days straight, pretty much, while everybody else like had stopped at that point. And she was just relentless with it. But finally, like everyone who survived, you know, was thriving for like a year with that lead shielding underneath them. But then a good old space debris storm decides to just kind of wreak havoc and to destroy pretty much all the lead shielding beneath them. Which, not great. So it pretty much doomed everybody in Argo City except for Kara, because Kara's father had apparently gotten the plans for the spaceship that his brother Jor-El had made for Kal-El, Superman, and he rebuilt it. But it was only, still only enough for one person. But he decided to save his daughter, much like Jor-El did with Superman. And that is pretty much that for this part of it. This story kind of intertwined both Kara's backstory and what was going on at the time. Kind of combine them together, like kind of went back and forth, even within like the same page, which worked okay for the comic, but I felt like it'd just be kind of confusing to do that here. So I just decided to tackle one at a time. So now, so like the actual current events, Supergirl and Ruthie track Krem to whatever planet this is. Krem and the brigands are in the middle of killing another planet, and just as they're about to kill this citizen, Supergirl shows up and starts kicking ass, and Krem whips out another orb, another Mordru globe. Sorry, apparently globe is the proper term, and he throws it at her again. But Supergirl's actually prepared this time. She starts to outrun it, which Krem is like, "What are you, stupid? You can't outrun it." But she knows this. She manages to run to the outskirts of wherever they were, whatever city they were at, and Comet the Super Horse was waiting for her. It just kind of like came out of nowhere, but apparently like this character Comet's been around since the 60s, and it's just been kind of like a staple of Supergirl, at least one of her, there's so many super pets. There's even like a super monkey, but but apparently, and like Comet's backstory is really weird. It's actually like a dude or something, but you'll see that later.
We'll get into it.
We'll get into that. But what I found really cool was just the freaking imagery, like the art. So like Comet and Supergirl basically just lead this globe all around the cosmos, just going like probably faster than the speed of light, going insanely fast. But there's just so much cool imagery, like just these huge, like almost full page spreads. Is really, really nice. And like there's a lot of Ruthie's narration going on in the background, which is like, honestly, I feel like in this scene it's a little bit white noise. And doesn't add much really. Like all you really need are these visuals because they're just so cool. But yeah, they even like go across like this sun, super cool. But eventually they lead the globe. I'm not really sure where exactly. They aren't really clear. It's kind of like a void. This black and this colorless void. It's not really clear whether it's like the end of time and space or like, I kind of thought it was the Phantom Zone at first, but I don't think it is.
I don't think so either.
But the globe, basically, I guess magic doesn't really have power there for whatever reason. And she's able to just like tap the globe and it just falls to the ground. So then they return, Supergirl and Ruthie return to that planet, and it takes a long time to make one of those globes. So Kara isn't worried at all that Krem made another one. And she's able to easily overpower him because all he has is like arrows and swords, and she's like you see at the bottom of this page, she just snaps the arrow in half. And that is the end of issue 6. You want to take over from here?
All right, so issue 7 begins with Ruthie's narration saying that she wasn't present for the next part, so she's kind of just taking it from other sources. She said that there's a lot of like poems and stuff based on what happened, and also they end up naming like a beach after her after this battle or whatever. And so we get this. Supergirl's confronting the ship. We get this, and then it cuts to Ruthie picking apples with Comet. They have captured Krem, and the rest of the pirates are on their way. Krem is tied to a tree, and the horse is like standing between Ruthie and Krem. The horse won't let her kill him. And then there's this right as Supergirl starts fighting, there's this very meta kind of comment in the narration where it says, super people are very powerful and we all know how this fight's going to end. So then what's the point? And so then, so I was like, that's fine. But then right after that, she continues saying, she contradicts herself by asking the question of what's the point is a foolish question. And it's like, well, then why? I don't understand. And then Ruthie and Krem are talking, and they basically, this might come later, but basically their conversation is they start talking about her father, and then like how like Krem's job was basically just to go to different places and see who was loyal to the king. So he would like tell them jokes and see who would laugh, and then he would kill the people who would laugh because therefore they're unloyal. But Ruthie's father didn't laugh. Instead, he was like overly loyal, and he's like, "Why would you even joke about the king like that?" And so Krem was insulted, so he killed him anyway. Um, and then so this is the part where Supergirl, she's fighting, and then she gets hit by a cannonball, and so she's kind of falling down to the atmosphere. But then like the heat of the atmosphere reminds her of Krypton, and then she gets this kind of not a flashback, but she sort of remembers this time when her father almost burnt the house down, and he's like, "Don't tell your
Oh
mom."
yeah.
But then like everyone's dead, and so like if she dies here, then that story will die too. So she's like, "I want to keep fighting."
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So this is the part where the ship is out of Cannonball, so Supergirl kind of takes advantage of that, and she starts fighting them. This is the part where the flashback happens that I talked about earlier.
Mm.
And then Krem's basically like, yeah, I don't really. He's kind of just hanging out because he thinks that like Supergirl wouldn't kill him anyway. So she's like, so he's basically like, the quote is, "Should odds defy them being the pirates, and they falter
Mm.
in their mission, I'll be left to the gentle and kind care of the ever forgiving Supergirl of Earth."
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, and then this at the end of the issue, the pirates kind of have her tied up
Mm-hmm.
with like kryptonite rope. And it seems like she's begging for her life, but really she's begging the horse not to come up and
Yeah.
kill them all.
Yeah.
And then
Which is more like she doesn't want Comet to leave Ruthie, right?
right,
Because she
exactly,
doesn't
exactly,
trust Ruthie to not kill
yeah.
Krem while
And then
she's gone.
Ruth is like, "No, you got go save Supergirl. We're good here. I'm not gonna kill him."
Mm-hmm.
And then the issue ends with like saying, "I wouldn't recommend lying to a horse, but I just did it anyway."
Yeah. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
basically it. Like I'll feel bad for a bit, but it's worth it.
right, exactly. And then issue 8 is mostly just action, so my notes I
Yeah,
don't have a whole lot of notes here.
sure.
Um, but it begins with Ruthie unties Krem, and
Mm,
then Comet goes and saves Supergirl.
yeah.
But then he like, yeah, this picture's really cool. There's like neon stuff going
Mm-hmm.
on. Um, but then he's like turns into a guy, and then as he's dying, he like turns into a dude. And I was like, is Supergirl remembering her father in this moment? Like, what's going on here? But
Nope, it's
apparently,
Comet.
like
Yeah.
Comet is like a guy and a horse or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, comics
trying
are weird.
trying not to think about it too hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like this moment, and then also the bit with the Kryptonite sun, it kind of
Mm,
seems like Tom King and maybe some of the artists are kind of like pulling from obscure older comics
yes,
to kind of
seems like
influence
it.
this. And I thought that was
Yeah.
kind of fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, me too. Like I didn't really know anything about them, but when I
yeah,
looked them up, I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of history here. Like it's not really
right.
well known, but it's there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So okay, Comic turns into a guy. Supergirl breaks free, and then Ruthie and Krem start a fair fight. And so it
Mm-hmm.
seems like the way it's setting up that Krem is going to kind of take advantage of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But then Ruthie doesn't play fair, so as Krem's grabbing for the sword, she basically kicks him in the
Yeah.
face and starts biting him.
I kind of liked that because
Yeah,
it's like instead of
yeah,
just like because he leaped for the sword and
right.
she instead of leaping for the sword she waits for him to like give up his footing and like kind
Mhm.
of be like in a dive and she just starts
Yeah,
like kicking him in the face, pretty
right.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty fun
yeah. And then
in a violent way.
yeah, exactly. And then yeah, so then in the chaos, she grabs a sword and she cuts his hand off,
Yes,
and
which
she starts. Yeah, what were you saying?
No, when I was reading that, because in the previous panel you see him reaching for her, and I
Yeah,
was just like, "Girl, just turn around and cut his arm off." And then she pretty much does that. I'm like,
yeah,
"Oh, okay, cool."
yeah,
There we go.
yeah. And then so she starts monologuing, kind of preparing herself to kill him,
Yeah,
but she can't bring herself to do it.
right.
And then so Supergirl shows up, and she's like, "Yeah, by the way, Crypto's fine.
Yeah,
I just kind of lied to you."
right. Because the whole thing, like, yeah, if you hadn't watched our last episode, Supergirl basically needed Krem because he shot Crypto,
Right.
and she told Ruthie that there was Hunter's poison on the arrow that Krim shot Crypto with, and they couldn't help Crypto unless they got basically the recipe for the poison,
Right.
the chemical makeup of the poison from Krim. So that's why Supergirl needed Krim alive. But now she's just like, JK, LOL,
Right.
Yeah.
And then Supergirl, it looks like Supergirl's gonna kill Krem, but then there's like a flashback to all of the events that happened before in this story, and then
Mhm.
Ruthie convinces her not to kill Krem, and so then we flash forward to some point in the distant future where old Ruthie is telling the story. This is after she wrote everything down and she kind of got it published, I guess.
Yeah.
And then like Supergirl's like, "Oh, I read your book," and they're like, "Yeah, it's mostly fiction, but whatever."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I really like this new suit. I kind of prefer the pants over the skirt.
Me too.
Yeah.
The skirt's like fine, I guess.
Yeah, it's not
bad. It just feels kind of outdated. Like I definitely prefer this look, which is kind of like what they had in like the last few seasons of Supergirl, the CW show, which I liked. I liked that they actually changed the suit. It looked pretty cool. But yeah, I definitely like this look.
Yeah, and it looks a lot like the suit that Sasha Calle is going to have.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so then they're like, yeah, Ruthie, like I mentioned, Ruthie said that a lot of it was made up, and so that kind of throws the whole story into question, like,
right, it's like what's made up and what's not.
Right.
I mean, they're pretty clear about the end. Yeah, because they mention like they show you the real ending, and then like the narration tells the fake ending, basically.
Yeah. And then they kind of go to the Phantoms. Well, they don't go to the Phantom Zone. They kind of pull Krem out of the Phantom Zone. And then he basically is like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." And then Ruthie kills him, and that's
yeah, I was not expecting that, because like they with the narration or something, they were saying that he had been in the Phantom Zone for like years and years and years, and I guess like had to like deal with all his guilt for all those years. Yeah. So he basically was reformed, and so they brought him out, and he's like, I'm so like, because this whole time he was unrepentant, like completely. Yeah. And then he goes to Ruthie, who's an old lady now, and is like, "Please forgive me. Oh, I feel so awful. This is all I'm a changed man." And she just takes her cane, goes, and it's like he hits him on the head and kills him. Like, oh, okay, all right. They just kind of, and that's how it ends. Yeah. So that was interesting. So what were your overall thoughts about this? We talked a little bit about the last episode, but now that we've finished it, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely prefer the last issues before the first ones. I feel like it was just not a lot. There wasn't not necessarily a setup, but there was just a lot of like exposition in the first couple issues. And then this
not a lot happened.
Yeah, exactly. And this one, there's more action and then less narration, and I feel like that helps it a lot.
Yeah, I feel like the narration sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Like I mentioned earlier, like that one scene where Comet and Supergirl being chased by that globe, it feels very much just like, like it doesn't need to be there, and it's kind of distracting from the really cool art or like what's happening. Yeah. Plus, I feel like it sort of feels like a crutch sometimes, like instead of just showing the story, like, comics are kind of supposed to do for the most part, it just kind of over explains things. But like, I don't hate the concept of, the narration. I just feel like it's overdone a bit. And I feel like it works better. It would work really well if it were like a novel. But since this is a comic book, the mediums are pretty different. So it just doesn't work all the time, but I kind of enjoy that it's from Ruthie's perspective, because even though it's a Supergirl comic, it kind of lends like more of a uniqueness to it. So I like that. And what I like about this story is it really makes Supergirl a unique character. It makes her interesting. Plus, I feel like there's a lot of different versions of Supergirl where they really try hard to be like, she's better than Superman, but it just doesn't work. Like, say, like the CW version, they like try really hard to be like, well, she's naturally stronger than Superman or whatever, but it doesn't really ring true. It just feels like it's a shallow attempt at like, rah feminism or whatever. Whereas this story kind of gives some actual reasons, like as to why maybe she is stronger than Superman in some respects. She has had to go through more hardships, and so it's made her like, it has made her a bit jaded, but she's also just kind of stronger and able to kind of handle more stuff emotionally, seems like. And she's not as shocked at evil in the world because she's seen so much messed up stuff. It doesn't surprise her that people would do messed up things or awful things would happen. Plus, they just kind of showed her just able to endure so much. Like when she was on that planet, that kryptonite planet for nine months. Months, what the heck? 9 hours. 9 months would be insane. No, 9 hours. They even kind of have that thing where she's like really Cal couldn't even last 45 minutes, you know.
Mhm.
They're just stuff like that where it's believable that
Yeah.
she has some strengths that Superman doesn't have,
Mhm.
which I thought was cool, and just
Yeah.
overall really kind of made her stand out as her own character, like I said. And it's just kind of a sci-fi adventure. I thought that was
Yeah.
fun. It was
Yeah.
like a quest, you know. It was
Mhm.
like a medieval sci-fi fusion kind of adventure, which I thought was
Right.
really cool. And the art was awesome. The art was
Oh, yeah,
super good.
absolutely. I mean, this is it's worth reading for the art alone, I would say.
Absolutely. And we
Yeah.
didn't like cover everything. Like obviously, like I wouldn't say because you've watched this, you shouldn't read it. Like absolutely
Yeah.
read it. There's plenty of stuff we glossed over. And like
Right.
Luke said, the art itself is really good.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was fun. I really feel like, yeah, I really wasn't that interested in reading this per se. Like I was going to at some point, you know,
Mhm.
when James Gunn mentioned it, but now that
Right.
we've read it, I'm glad we have because it
Mhm.
was definitely fun, and definitely kept me intrigued. But I do feel like it's gonna translate well into a movie because I feel
Yeah.
like it would honestly be better in a more concise sort
Mhm.
of medium as opposed
Right.
to the 8 issues. I feel like there wasn't necessarily enough story for the whole 8 issues. You know,
Right.
they definitely could have shortened the first four into like 1.5, 2, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I feel like this is a really good, story to pick for an introduction movie. It kinda reminds
Yes,
me
yes.
of, like, the Batman, how, like, it's not an origin story, but it
Mhm.
does help inform a lot of who this character is as a person. Instead
Right.
of, like, going through beat by beat their origin, it's kind of like it
Mhm.
telling you who they are without like, actually showing you how they got there kinda thing.
Yeah, and that really does seem what James Gunn wants to do with this
Yeah,
universe is not necessarily start from square one for every character. You know,
right.
even the Superman movie isn't going to be an origin story. So I
Yeah.
think they definitely could like introduce Supergirl in like one of the Superman movies, or even maybe like that
Mhm.
Green Lantern show would actually kind of
Sure.
work.
Yeah.
And then in her movie, people would know who she is, but they don't actually delve into her origins except like in those flashbacks, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that like you said, it's going to be a really cool like first solo movie
Mhm.
for
Yeah,
her, I
absolutely.
think. But yeah, that is the conclusion of our show. This has been
Mhm.
the Cultured Pull List. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching or listening if you're listening to the audio. Thanks for joining us. Please like and subscribe. If you want to check out the Cultured Nerds socials and website, and you're watching this at home, go ahead and use the QR code on the bottom left. If you want to check out Casual Experts, which is my Luke and my brand, however you would say that, and English is hard sometimes. Go ahead and check out the QR code on the bottom right for our socials and our YouTube channel and our Casual Experts Only podcast. And if you would like to support the Cultured Nerd on Patreon to help keep us bringing you more content, check us out at patreon.com/the Cultured Nerd. And look for our show's tier if you would like to support us and our show specifically. Thank you thank you to all of our current Patreon supporters. I have been your host, Michael Malillo, and my co-host is Luke S. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We will see you next week.
Peace.